As always, I have placed a link in the description down below if you'd like to look at the system further or acquire one for yourself. And the GasTapper system comes with a hose that is 9 feet in length, and one of the ends of the hose has a brass barb adapter, and the idea is that this is gonna weight down the hose into the container or into the location that you are pulling liquid from. This is gonna help it to stay down and get all the fluid as much as we can, as close as we can to the bottom. And before I show you the rest of the system, you may already be wondering, why am I gonna buy a kit when I can just go around to the local auto parts store, buy a hose and start siphoning? Well, there are certain components included in this kit that yes, you can find locally, but some you are not gonna be able to find, or you're gonna spend quite a bit of time looking for them. And time is money. Your time is more valuable than that. So this kit, I think, is priced appropriately low enough where it provides a complete solution for us to siphon and never have to put a hose into our mouth again. And this is where the magic happens. They include this little hand pump that is gonna allow us to start the suction and be able to transfer liquid from one place to the next. Now, if I press this little ball, it starts to blow air this way as it sucks from this side. Now there is an internal valve internally in here, so as the fluid moves this way, it will not let the fluid come back the other way. And the other thing I noticed when I took a peek inside of this orifice is that there is an internal mesh, which is gonna be great if there's any debris from the source liquid. We are not gonna transfer those to the new place where we're putting that liquid on. And I do wanna point out that this pump is just meant to get the fluid started and going. Once the fluid is going, the pump gets disconnected and the fluid continues to transfer because of gravity, like a normal siphoning system does. If you're trying to transfer fluid using this pump alone and you're transferring by pumping, it's gonna take you a long time. GasTapper rates this system at 4 gallons per minute, and that is just the hose with gravity assist. That is not the flow of the pump by pumping. If you're trying to transfer that much liquid, you might want to consider one of the other solutions that actually have an electric pump, and I'll put a link in the description to those systems as well if you want to check those out. And the next component of the kit is this shut-off clamp. Once I'm done pumping liquid through the system, I can stop the flow by pressing on here, and that effectively pinches the hose and stops the liquid from coming out. And if you have ever attempted to transfer fluid, you know how annoying it can be when the hose wants to keep popping out, and this component kit addresses that issue because it holds onto the hose, and then when this is inserted into the container, say a gas can, this is gonna keep the hose from coming out by accident. And finally, they include this simple one-pager instruction manual with pictures in full color showing you how the pump works. But now let's move over to the car and let's test this out and see if it actually works. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna insert the end of the hose that does not have the barb into the fuel tank, and I'm gonna try to get all the way to the bottom, or as far as I can get to, especially because some of these cars are kind of tricky. They have bends and turns into the piping that leads into the gas tank, so it's gonna take a little bit of patience. And you can actually feel when the hose has gotten past all those bends and is really going into the bottom of the fuel tank. Eventually the hose will reach the fuel, but if I just keep feeding the hose, there is enough space inside of the gas tank for me to continue to feed this entirely, and it will be pointless. So once I think I have enough length in there where I have reached the gas tank, I'm gonna begin the actual siphoning process. Before I start siphoning fuel out, I'm gonna get my receiving container ready. So this is nice and clean, and I have removed the top so I can put the hose in here. Now I'm also going to be using the insert that the kit comes with, which is going to help to keep the hose inside of this container so it doesn't pop out in the middle of the siphoning process. And I'm also going to be installing the shut-off valve over the hose so I can stop the flow of the gas when I'm ready. And this kit really lets you decide how you want to do the siphoning. I can literally cut a section of the hose off and insert the pump into it, and then the extra piece of the hose will go over here. But remember, I only want to use this temporarily to get the gas going, and once the gas is going, I can just remove this and put this inside of there. So instead of trying to cut the hose or trying to remove the barb, I'm gonna take the little pump and I'm gonna put it inside of the barb. Now it's not gonna make a perfect seal, so I'm gonna hold it nice and tight with my fingers, and notice that the arrow is pointing down, so the suction is gonna go this way. And I'm gonna pump this a couple times until I get flow. Once I get flow, then this is gonna go into the fuel tank. Now, as with all siphoning, we gotta remember that this is driven by gravity once the pump is no longer involved. So it is important to make sure that whatever we are siphoning fuel from is at a higher level than the receiving fuel for the siphoning process to work. So let's try it out. And here is the flow. Ooh, we are siphoning gas. Now, I don't know if you saw, but there was actually just a little bit of gas that was spilled as I took this off. Oop, there's still a little bit of gas in here. So there is just gonna be slightly messy because we have to remove this if we wanna pump by gravity. If you don't wanna use the pump, if you don't wanna have that little gasoline spill, you might wanna look into the electric pump. But even the electric pump, you're gonna have some leftover gas at some point somewhere in the line. So whenever I'm doing siphoning, I make sure that the area that I'm working in is clear of anything that can potentially cause a fire hazard, or is clear of anything that I don't wanna get splashed with gasoline. And while we wait for this gas to pump into this gas tank, let me tell you a quick story. There was a gentleman, and this actually is a true story, that was trying to see if there was fuel inside of a large gas tank. This is a commercial gas tank, and he did not have a flashlight. But this gentleman, what he did, he had a pair of matches with him. So he lit up a match and he figured, let me just light it up and to see if it's confirmed, if it's empty. And as soon as he put that match close to the tank, he went up in flames. I mean, the whole thing literally exploded. So just as a cautionary tale, if you can't see the tank, do not be tempted to use matches. I would just kind of look around. Anything that can create a spark, especially when you're dealing with vapors, can potentially create an explosion. And I feel comfortable about the amount of fuel that I siphon in, so I'm gonna close this clip to stop the siphoning process. Nice and tight. And look at this. I'm gonna bring this out. And here's the fuel. I'm putting the remaining fuel back into the car. And that is said, gentlemen. Doesn't get any easier. Now, the other thing I would also recommend is wearing gloves. Right now I got gasoline all over my hands and it's not the most pleasant smell. And before I pull out the hose, I'm gonna open and release this valve again, and I'm holding the hose really high just to make sure that all the gas flows back into the tank, and when I pull the hose out, there is as little gas that is lost or spilled as possible. And now that I'm done siphoning, all I have to do is remove the hose. Simply pulling this out, and it's pretty much that's it. So here's my final thoughts on the GasTapper system. This system is actually quite efficient because of its simplicity. You got a nice little pump that replaces the human element where we're having to get the flow started and a mint for afterwards. So this eliminates that. This is a very inexpensive investment if you're ever having to siphon fuel from a vehicle. Now, I could also see somebody who's constantly siphoning fuel from vehicles, such as a mechanic who has to often remove gas tanks from a car, getting really good with the system where there's probably going to be 0 to no spill. However, unless you're a mechanic on a budget, if you're constantly having to siphon fuel out of a vehicle, I would definitely recommend the electric pump version, not only because it's gonna be faster, but because it's gonna be a little bit cleaner in terms of not spilling fuel. But before you go out and order the system or buy a hose to try to siphon fuel out of a vehicle, be advised that newer vehicles are a little bit trickier to siphon because they have elements internally in here that prevents somebody from shoving a hose in there and stealing gasoline. So getting a hose of this size is gonna be very tricky, if not impossible, of newer vehicles. On newer vehicles, the way to get around it is normally with a smaller hose, and the electric version of this GasTapper system does include a smaller hose that can potentially get through a lot more scenarios if you're dealing with newer vehicles. So if you guys have any other questions regarding the GasTapper system, please put that in the comments down below. Remember, I also place a link in the description if you want to look at the system further or order this for yourself, including the electric version. And if you found any part of this video helpful, please hit the thumbs up button to support the channel, and stay tuned as I have a lot more cool gadgets and accessories for car enthusiasts like yourself. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.